Ahoy there, guys. It's Captain Kill Team. We got another video. Best team in the game, Vespids, you know it. Here today joining us, it's Orion Wilfong. He's champion of some kind of event, but I looked into it and there's absolutely no records, so who knows what that's about.
Yeah, people just say weird stuff sometimes. I don't know what they're on about. Never happened.
Never happened. There is no championship in Ba Sing Se. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about, as I said, the Vespid team. So we both had a bit of tournament success with them recently, and had a lot of Vespid players sort of asking the both of us, "What are you doing with the team?" Crazy stuff. They're bugs. They do a sort of quite weird play style, really.
They do. It's an incredibly glass cannon aggro style where you're just forcing your opponent to just engage in this trade war of attrition, just from the get go, because they can't really stop you getting within 2 inches and starting a blast off.
My favorite. Crit-Op is for nerds anyway, in my opinion. So what would you say the team play style is like? Sort of beyond being aggressive, what would draw someone to the team in terms of like, if you were asked, say, what do you enjoy about playing Vespids?
Sure. I think one of the cool things they have is the way to manipulate breakpoints. They have a lot of weapons that inflict variable mortal wounds. And a lot of times, if you're really pushing for it, you can get kills off of things people weren't expecting with two of your ploys, inflict additional D3 damage. And sometimes your opponent's really not respecting that. You can just one-shot somebody who they were like, oh, well, you can't kill him. I made my armor saves, or, I got enough melee. And then, you roll a 3 on the D3, and then the guardsman's dead, right? Because you hit him for like 7.
Somewhat live off of 5-ups, so if that's not your vibe, might be disappointed. But for sure, sort of getting that lethal 5-up aura and sting, and then inflicting extra damage on the crit, you really spike upwards, and then presumably you're talking about aerial agility there. So if they run up and try and shoot your 9-wound model, I mean, sometimes you'll make a save or two, which is really painful for them in the first place. But then also, you can position in such a way that they'll have to shoot you after first moving or on counteraction. And to take down a 9-wound model with a lot of damage breakpoints, even, for four damage guns, fairly strong, exaction shotgun, crack grenade, whatever it is, you will need then 3 hits, potentially one of which is being ignored by the ploy.
Yeah, their breakpoint manipulation on both sides of the teams is really surprising, and if your opponent isn't familiar with it, you will have an advantage because you will be getting kills and also not dying where they thought those things would happen. So I think that's some of their key things. Obviously, their mobility is phenomenal. If we're talking like on Volcus or Beta Decima, being able to just go wherever you want, especially with Darting Flight, which gives you D3 additional movement. You do have map control paired with these potentially very aggressive weapons that they're carrying.
But then I don't feel I'd describe it as unpredictable movement. Sure, you can fly, which is amazing, and definitely darting across the board and then winning initiative to move potentially 19 inches before your opponent has the chance to activate another model is pretty insane. But I think they're quite a predictable team, right? Like the strength thrives in the zoning potential of being able to set up threats and saying, okay, well, if you push up, you'll come within my threat range, and that's good for me, but you're not going to actually have that ability to strike me first.
Yeah, I can agree with that. If you're familiar with how the Vespids operate, if they only set up one threat with like a forward staging turn 1, usually like I'll do it with the blast or like a flamer. That's pretty easy to predict, and I'm kind of relying on initiative. However, if it's like you set up a couple guys, then they're not really sure who you're trying to move turn 2, and maybe they get one of them, but the other one might get like a blast off on the other side that they didn't see coming. So I think there are layers that you can kind of set up with them turn 1 that will force your opponent to make bad choices.
Yeah, for sure. There's various ways to force your opponent either to come into that threat range. I've found especially for a team with so much strong blast threat, with both the Shade Strain and the Sky Blast, as well as the flying weird threat of the Sky Torch. If your opponent chooses to sit at the back of the board and stay out of those threat ranges, they're putting themselves in a real danger of blast most of the time, right?
Yeah. Or if they choose to space out correctly, sometimes you just gain more board presence or board control.
Mm,
Where if they stage defensively turn one, now later on in turn two, they have to make choices where they're pushing models into compromised areas rather than kind of getting them out early with maybe just taking some damage on one or two operatives. Now they're pushing into unobstructed damage from the Vespids because they can just counter move wherever you landed and then shoot you within two.
mm. Um, for sure, I feel like with Vespids, people often talk about, oh, um, but then what if you whiff an important roll? And I have to say, I feel like you can stay in control of the game to the point where you can afford several things to go wrong. Sort of you totally whiff a shooting attack or even a melee goes awry, but you sort of say, oh, that's okay. I'm still in a winning position.
You have the operative count to where one bad dice roll isn't really going to shape too many
Mm,
things. Because again, it's kind of a horde team still, but they're punching well above their weight with these guns that 3/3 P1 if you move, and a couple rerolls each time they're activating. So if you do lose one or two, odds are one on the clapback with a good dice roll can potentially delete up to elite models.
yeah, for sure. There's a lot of damage in two rerolls with lethal fives when your crits are so impactful. Um, and I think the extra model, beyond just the trading piece, has gone a really long way in that activation advantage for final say and helps you get those sort of cheeky final shots that really leverage the team's zoning, right?
Yeah, no, that extra model just lets you wait a little bit longer to pull off something like an Ocelli shot for somebody who misplaced into light cover. You can now do this last activation opposed to, having to do it and then they have a chance to respond. Or if scouting dash, a lot of times I'll, in the scout phase, dash the shade strain up 3 inches. And then if they push too far into the center of the board, last activation, he moves in, shoots his gun, and then if you win initiative turn two, you just do it again, and then move away.
So what would you say a sort of typical game with Vespids looks like? So what are you taking for tac op, for equipment? What kind of ploys are you likely to play a lot, would you say, really?
I usually only move between two tac ups. Unfortunately, this team is not the best at scoring um, a wide variety of tac ups. So I usually go between confirm kill if I'm going into elitish style teams where I can get a lot of points for just holding one marker, or I'll go storm objectives if I want to play really aggressive and just keep removing my opponent from points if I know they have to be on there. Like if they go to loot something, for example, loot's a great one where they move, they loot, they're on the objective. You move and shoot them off the objective. That's automatically 1 point scored, and then you just have to hold that objective.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones I know, like recover item, has seen
Ooh.
play with them, but I don't like it. And then there's plant beacons, which is technically an alternative, but it'll be a cold day in hell before I play plant beacons.
You can't fly in plant beacons though.
You can't, but you can at least plant it first and and then move.
On two APL models where you want to get the real potential out of the shooting. Yeah, I don't really see it either. Now I have been known to be a bit of a recover items fiend with Goremongers, but I just think Vespids are a bit more action intensive than that, and I do think in those last turns you really need your Vespids to be flying onto the objectives or picking up confirmed kills or trying to leverage that last bit of kill up because I don't think they sort of will run people over in the same way as Goremongers do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's no way to modify their APL, so it's not like you're planting beacons on the way for your goal.
No.
Planting beacons is the goal, which kind of makes it bad because now you're dedicating, 6 actions to
It's
just scoring your attack up.
it's not like you're going to be planting beacons and shooting either, because you really do want to move for the balanced and for the piercing, right?
Yeah, that's why like I know people can plant beacons. I would never do it though with Vespids. I think you can achieve equal, if not greater, scores just by doing something else.
Sounds like the doing the dishes tack up to me. No, thank you. Time to kill some models. Am I right?
Oh yeah, we ain't here to just put stuff on the board. We're here to take it off the board.
Oh, for real. Um, what about equipment then? So I know sort of the 2d3 communion point one is fairly controversial. People debate over whether or not you do or don't have that many communion points throughout a game. I myself very partial to razor wire because of course you'll fly right over them and the enemy will have to trudge through it.
Yeah, you may differ from me on this or may not, but I usually take no more than like one faction equipment, and if I want to go melee heavy, I'll take two. I'll take the aggressive stimulants and the what's the one that helps you move better?
Accelerant stimulant, I think.
Yeah, I think it's accelerant. I'll take those two together. But beyond that, I used to when I first started playing them, I took neurostimulant, which is the 2d3 communion. I took it a lot. But then I kind of have just gravitated towards just using universal equipment. And following the razor wire, I use that. I'll use mines. I'll use light barricades. I will completely junk up the board with as much stuff as I can because it forces my opponent to go to places that I want them to go, where I can counterpunch them.
Hmm.
Like I'm putting a lot of cover on the board, but I can break that cover all the time while they can't press on my side of the board.
Goes sort of even further for that discussed zoning power of the team, right? Sort of if they are having to get to a closer point to move on to your objective, maybe behind light cover now that you can vantage them from, or play a Sally or whatever it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be. Um,
Yeah, you're kind of just baiting them.
mm, for sure, but it won't affect you in the same way, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. And you can still use it as cover if you want to, but oftentimes you're just flying over it or ignoring it.
I have to
Like I
say,
love placing mines. Yeah.
I found the extra inch dash and the extra inch charge equipment to be like an auto take. I find that one really good.
I do like that one. And there's a lot of times like I might take it as like an equipment on Into the Dark because you're really limited on some of your movement going through those early doors. Or if I know I need to play hit and run with my sniper or the long sting, like
Yeah.
I'll take it because I know I can get him into a position turn 2 where he can shoot and then dash into with 4 inches into somewhere where he can't be retargeted. 'Cause sometimes him not moving isn't the worst thing in the world because he's hitting on threes of lethal 5 already.
Yeah. Um, I also say I have to find myself taking the ceaseless melee one a lot of the time because I do think the melee of the team, well, it doesn't seem very intimidating with 3 dice. You're very likely to get a crit. With shock, it goes quite a long way, and the D3 extra, because often you can just trade a Vespid for a lot of damage, or maybe push that final hit you need to bring a low health operative down.
Yeah, if I'm going against like 7 wound operatives, it's a phenomenal choice. Even 8 wounds sometimes. Because paired with airborne predators, you also have balanced when you're doing that.
Mm.
So you have ceaseless and balanced, which is if you're hitting on threes with sting, you have relentless. That's because you're rerolling all ones and twos.
What about ploys? Do you, of course, you get a free one from the leader, so I find I
Yeah, I was going to ask about
almost always use airborne predators for that because I find that ploy gets a lot of mileage. Although against 7 wound operatives, sometimes I'll play sting instead.
So my philosophy on the free ploy is a lot of the ploys I'm going to be using them from turning point 2 onward, just because they're good ploys to have on all the time. Like Sting is a phenomenal ploy that I usually want on 24/7 because it's aggressive and it's defensive. But I choose airborne predators no matter what I do because it's the only ploy that I'll be able to use potentially turn one. None of the other ones I will really ever be able to use turn one unless something's going horribly wrong. But the amount of shots I can get on turn one, that just because of the way you can position on certain Volcus maps, and they just don't see the line coming, paired with like Ocelli or just a forward scouting dash. Airborne Predators is the one you will use turn 1 to 4. So you might as well have it online for free.
Yeah, and then what? So generally after that, you tend to play Sting. What about airborne, aerial agility, and the hardened exoskeleton?
I'd say in terms of usability, I probably use Hardened Exoskeleton the least. It's cool, but there's so many melee teams out there that have ways to get crits to ignore it.
Yeah.
Because it only works on normal damage.
So it doesn't help
I
into
think
power weapon profiles, right?
right. Even if you are just taking a crit and a hit, you still, even if the hit's reduced, you still die. So I don't really like that ploy a lot. I'll play it if I absolutely need to, but even like versus Goremongers, right? If they don't get crits, they could just rake you before the combat, and then it turns it off anyway. So it's really not as effective as I wish it could be.
I guess
Aerial agility is cool.
It's that opinion
Sorry,
of whether or not the blood is that valuable to them that it's worth the command point to force them to spend it on rake every time.
Right. I've played Goremongers a lot, and I think it would be because it guarantees a dead bug. As long as you roll decent, and if you have the ploy up, you'll still have one reroll.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if I'm playing the leader for Goremongers, I keep him on one tank all the time, just because he'll go in, empty his tank with a rake, go back up with the tank, and here we are again. Yeah, so I don't like Hard Next Skeleton. Aerial agility, it's awesome when it goes off.
Yeah.
I play it against my better judgment, but sometimes it just doesn't do anything.
I think in my tournament, across all 3 games, I had one roll that went off for aerial agility. And I think that roll made a phenomenal difference to that match, so...
That's the thing, yeah. It's only gone off maybe once or twice a game for me, but when it does go off, it's detrimental to your opponent.
For sure, something that a kill they should have made, or even for retained teams, so against novitiates or against wrecker crew, I like to play it and then they go, okay, I'll boost to an extra hit so that you'll die, and I go, oh, but what if I make the extra just a scratch, and then they will spend even more points because you have the ploy up, and that starves them of their very valuable resource for what is a resource management team.
Yeah, it's the what if, right, that still impacts your opponent, even if it doesn't do anything. I would totally agree with that. Teams like that will maybe overspend on something that probably wasn't going to go off anyway. So you're still getting value out of it.
Yeah. For sure, it's still that one situation where you do live that lives in their head and is messing.
Yeah, it's just living there rent free. I remember that one time one dice went off and ruined my day.
What about Firefight ploys? So Ocelli, I mean, do you think you get much usage out of that?
I'd say all the Firefight ploys I use pretty regularly. When I first started playing the team, I kind of just kept forgetting that I could do additional crit damage all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I just didn't use them, but now that I'm more versed with the team, I find myself consistently like, all right, here's some damage, and my opponent's like, cool, yeah, that's fine, and I'm like, but wait, there's more, and then you get them. Love those 2 ploys; they're fantastic.
You don't leave them on 1 health anymore, or even if you strike with a crit and they've got 3 health left, and you think, oh, but what if I do make the roll?
Ooh, yeah, the brain worms always tell me to go for the 3 or the 5 or 6 roll. I have to go for the chance to kill them, because if I do, it will just tilt my opponent into the stratosphere.
I don't think you're playing this team if you're not confident in your ability to roll 5s and 6s, I have to say.
Yeah, this team is like more controlled gambling than like Rekka's. Rekka's, you're just playing like
peak.
Yeah, Rekka's is like all in. Vespid's is like, well, we're gonna lose our money gradually at the casino, but we're gonna keep gambling.
Let's go gambling. Um, yeah, for sure. Aselli, even if you don't play it, the threat it presents is really nice. So Into the Dark is a very difficult format, but the fact that they can hide behind the heavy barricade and really nothing else means that although you don't have 3 APL, staging for your opponent is also very difficult because it comes from every model that Seek Light threat, and it's long range. Well, it's not Seek Light, but of course
Equivalent enough, yeah.
it serves a similar purpose. And similarly, I think darting flight, sometimes, as I say, you want to make it all the way across the board to get that blast threat into a really nice spot. Maybe you want to reach advantage on their side, or even just to reposition onto their objective after you've blown everyone on it off, and then tap.
Yeah, a darting flight ploy, going on your opponent's objective, hitting the point, and then like flipping over storm objectives as well,
Mm.
is been a few game changers I've had where all of a sudden this Vespid who wasn't there is on your point. He just scored 2 points likely off the tack hop, and then did something to the crit op. Separately, I use darting flight a lot turn one on Into the Dark
Yeah,
to kind of fool my
make it
opponent.
into a door.
Like, yeah, because they're like, oh, you don't have anyone in range of that door, so this hallway's safe. But then you darting flight to that door, open it, and then you can get an Ocelli shot that they thought wasn't going to happen that turn.
Mm. For sure, it's a powerful threat that presents for a team which is otherwise quite honest in terms of how far they can get.
Yeah, it's one of the few tricks they kind of have where your opponent might not see it coming.
Specialists on the team as well, really gnarly specialists. So I think the Long Sting has one of the best weapon profiles in the game. 4/4, lethal 5, hitting on 3s with Dev 2, piercing 1, and poison. Amazing.
Phenomenal guy, especially with like a dash of 4 inches with
Yeah.
fly. That's really cool when you pair it with equipment. My first tournament run ever with Vespids, like I went 2-1, but solely the long sting killed 4 Marines that day,
Oof.
just in one shot. So like every game I played, he was averaging a complete kill with no retaliation from my opponent. And, it was some strong dopamine hits.
Similarly, the Sky Blast. You run up and you blast someone. Maybe you get a crit. Maybe you even play the D3 ploy, and then they'll take D3 during their activation as well from the Fallout token. You don't even need to do damage. You can just shoot somebody obscured and whack it into a group of people. Really annoying on Into the Dark again because they'll funnel through a choke point and everyone takes damage. Puts you into that melee kill range as well. Maybe just chip 1 damage off the top of an 8 wound model and then they go down to 7 for a crit and a hit from the melee.
Yeah, it's a great weapon to use on guard as well because usually you can hit somebody mid action and put it the token further back where the rest of their team now has to slog up through it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, a lot of times that is the model I'm using turn one to take a shot with because I know if it does nothing, it'll still do something. That's how I always like to play. Like, it's like I have to do damage turn one somehow, and that will guarantee it at the very least.
Even if the Flamer is quite lackluster damage, I think the threat of it is very unique with the ability to fly over models and damage them. And the idea of like, oh, you're not safe even behind heavy cover on a vantage is really powerful. So even though you're not likely to kill a lot of operatives, the fact that you are going to shoot them when they go up there is a real pain for a lot of teams.
This is the only operative I usually drop in
Mm.
most cases. I really don't like the Flamer, even though I do understand its threat potential. Just having the extra warrior who has like the consistent weaponry,
Yeah.
I've found oftentimes more useful. Sometimes maybe I should take the Flamer to add more like turn 2 threat potential because it's like another guy who could get a multi-hit weapon. But he's one of the ones I usually leave home. I will take him against melee heavy teams though, because a lot of teams like to hide in melee versus Vespids because there's not much they can do.
Yeah, you can shoot
Um,
into melee with it if you fly over them.
yeah, so oftentimes I'll kill my own guy on purpose so I can
Yeah.
shoot whoever's hiding in melee.
Wow. Bit of an evil bug move, but
They don't know what's going on. As long as they're getting their communion points fed to them, they're happy.
tell me about the rabbits, George.
Oh
Um,
man, that's a throwback.
and then the warriors, although the accurate very rarely comes up, I do use it when I'm shooting through obscuring. Bit of a weird one.
I
Um,
use it a ton. I originally didn't think
wow.
I would use it. I use it a lot nowadays because there's just so many times where I probably don't have the lethal 5 bonus up from the drone, and I'm like, well, I just want to guarantee damage, and I
That
think
makes
it's being
sense.
a little too greedy sometimes.
Not true
Or if you
Vespid's
just need
way
to
of not
guarantee a
gambling
kill.
everything. Like, come on.
Well, sometimes we can restrain ourselves. We don't need to pull out the checkbook every move.
Boring. Um, yeah, no, for
Also,
sure.
you get accurate too if you're using Ocelli sometimes.
Yeah, the Selly gives you accurate too. And there's also the Shade strain. He's quite an
Hmm,
operative.
my favorite operative. I love that guy.
So they gave him the lone operative thing, where if he's on conceal, they just can't shoot him until they're within 6. So he stages really nicely on bandages, even without cover or on into the dark. You fly him into the middle of a room, and you have a guard threat, so that if they try and come and shoot him to get within that 6 inches, you'll shoot them first, and then you'll fly up and blast their guy behind the heavy barricade. Because if they want to stage more than one operative, they'll have 2 guys there, etc., etc. He's a 3-up anti-piercing model who retains all cover saves as crits, so they're unlikely to shoot him in one go anyway.
I don't know what it is about the Shade Strain. I'll tell my opponent you can't target him if he's concealed within 6.
Hmm.
I will then proceed to scout dash him out into the open, and then my opponents will always go first. They always take first. I'm like, huh, that's weird. And then they're like, all right, I'm gonna move and shoot that guy. I'm like, well, what did I just tell you? You can't shoot him. And then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I just moved this guy out into the open now. Can I take that
Selective
back?
selective amnesia of thinking that you've made a really bad blunder of just pushing one of your best operatives out in the open.
Yeah, I'm just like, guys, look, how bad do you think I am that I just shoved a guy out? Like,
You'd be
no.
insulted.
Sometimes, generally, yes. Because I know
Um,
they're over there like, I got a sneaky kill.
yeah, for sure. Uh, but what about scouting? So, of course, if you are going to play uber aggressive, 3 is a must. I don't think I ever take scouting option 2 with Vespid, since you have the free one anyway, and there's no ploy
Yeah,
turn
there's
1
nothing
that's
that
super valuable.
yeah, there's absolutely nothing that I wouldn't want that isn't airborne predators. Nothing else is going to save me unless by some reason I'm about to get blasted for 6 with,
Mm.
my deployment zone for some reason.
But equipment,
Yeah,
would you say? I mean, I often take comms device to extend the drone range. Of course, razor wire, heavy barricade, maybe. Not
if I
ammo
if
cache,
I do take
unfortunately.
it, yeah, I've thought about ammo cache, but it's just too costly.
Mm,
I don't like it. But if I do take scouting for equipment, which I often do, it will always be a mine usually because I keep the mine in scouting, so my
right.
opponent has to set up first and then play into it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or we'll choose a comms device because people just don't really understand why you're choosing it sometimes, and then once they see the range in action, then like, oh, I staged pretty poorly to avoid this. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
no, it's either the dash or the equipment are usually the choice.
makes sense. So what about weaknesses of the team? I mean, they are honest. We've talked about that. They can die if you get into melee with power weapons, whatever it's going to be. Uh, or I found Seek Light can be really painful because that can really damage your ability to zone properly.
I haven't found Seek Light be too much of an issue in my games. Um, but one thing I will definitely say is the team is very weak to stun.
Mm.
Like they don't have any APL manipulation. So if you do stun them, um, it's even if they can shoot you in return, it's so bad because they no longer get a balanced reroll from moving, and they don't get piercing,
Yeah.
uh, which is like they're just shooting you with worse bolters at that point in most cases. The team also doesn't deal well with obscuring. So
Mhm.
if you take smoke grenades and hang back and smoke, they don't really have too many ways to mitigate that besides getting within two. So as long as you're not staging your smokes in like the middle of the board, they have a tough time with that quite a bit.
Um,
Um,
anything that stops you from falling back or blocks rerolls as well.
yeah, blocking rerolls. Phobos are a really bad matchup for these guys
Mm,
because it's very hard to get to the Vox guy because he's usually in smoke, so you have to move to get within two of them, and then you're shooting without rerolls. He likely lives. He kills that Vespid.
yeah.
Vespid now has to repeat the process over again.
For sure,
There's
Nemesis Claw as well. If they charge into you and they're reducing your attack, they're stopping you from rerolls. They probably are just going to shred through your Vespids, unfortunately.
They can. I've had some pretty even games with them because while they do have a lot of that offensiveness, they don't have the durability to withstand Vespid shots.
No.
So they do have to play pretty cagey normally to actually make the game in their favor.
Yeah, although you have to be so careful because if you give them an expended model to charge into, or even just a model that they stun that they charge into,
Right.
you kind
Yeah,
of
but
got
like
to.
they definitely have some tools, but the Vespids aren't hopeless in that one.
No.
Again, that's where the Flamer comes in, right? That's where.
Yeah, to snipe your own bugs. It's an interesting
Yeah.
one.
Any team that ignores piercing, I've also found is the Vespids
Yeah,
rely heavily on piercing, and if you can remove piercing in any way, it really hurts.
that makes sense. So what, Void Dancers and Mandrakes, usual elf
Mandrake,
shenanigans.
Legionaries too to some extent because they can have the piercing crits negate up. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not as big, but it can be.
Um, also, Into the Dark. So a lot of people say that they think Vespids are not playable in a serious tournament format because they're only good on Volcus and Bandua and Beta Decima, and they are really terrible on Into the Dark.
Yeah, I mean, do you agree with that? I have mixed feelings on it because there are some pluses you get on in the dark, but there obviously are some heavy detriments.
It's not as hopeless as it seems, in my opinion, but it does seem really bleak because, as I've said, Aceli, really good for staging. Extra charge range, of course, will help you set up non-reciprocal threats. And I have found to stage your heavy barricade and then the razor wire in front of it to fly onto the middle objective does give you a really nice one-way threat. And guard can also be quite a strong tool, as mentioned, for the Sky Blast or the Long Sting, whoever else. But yeah, I have found that generally Into the Dark, you have lost your main tool of fly.
Yeah, because you can't. For those who don't know, you can't fly very well in the dark because you remove and set up, but that goes in a straight line. So like you can't just do it through corners. Like if you're hanging on a corner of a wall, you have to move normally, which means models can block you more effectively. Hatchways, you can't fly through them, so you're -1 to move. And sometimes models can just your opponent can just move up to the hatchway, and you now until you kill that model, you cannot move through that hatchway like you normally could on Vulcus.
Yeah.
We do get some lethal 5 where you don't have to rely on the drone as much.
Mm.
Like with the Sky Blast and the Shade Strain, you do get some more explosive rolls here and there. But that doesn't quite make up for the detriment that they lose.
So we've both played tournament format Into the Dark matches and won them, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it can be done, but
Yes, it certainly can, but I've also lost,
yeah,
you know, on Into the Dark. It's not like I haven't.
into world-class players with a good team against Vespids, I do think that's a serious detriment and not to the same capacity that some of the top teams would be able to play, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're definitely one of those teams where they don't have too bad of matchups in a lot of cases, but it doesn't matter what the matchup is if it's on Into the Dark. Your opponent just has so many more advantages just by playing on a kill zone. And playing a team like that competitively, it kind of puts a dampen on it because you don't really have counters to Into the Dark. It just exists. It's not about your opponent playing poorly or good. You're just innately nerfed just for existing.
Hmm. What about changes to the team? So a lot of players very outraged they didn't receive their 8-inch move and 3 APL in this last data slate. Um,
It's very justified. I was hoping for 2-up saves myself, but
oh, I wanted them to hit on 1+s, but can't always get what you want.
yeah, good.
But yeah, what do you think they should change about the team? I definitely feel like some buffs towards Into the Dark would be nice. Maybe even the ability to take Severe would be very cool for the team, I think, because that would, if you were going to go the route of making them less of a swingy casino team and more of a precise zoning team, I think Severe to say, I'm going to take Accurate, I'm going to take Severe, of course, now the two won't work in conjunction, but like being able to know that you will roll that crit would go a long way.
Yeah, guaranteeing a crit means you guarantee a little extra damage, and knowing you can deal damage versus hoping is a big deal for sure. I could see that being fantastic. On Into the Dark, I would like to see maybe the Sky Torch physically be able to work somehow. Like a rework on him so he could actually torch something if he was behind a hatchway.
Mm.
Um, that would be nice to see, or just a rework to help them fly a little better on Into the Dark. I don't specifically know what you would change for that, but
Well,
without just saying they could fly hatchways.
I've said I think if they fly in a room, they should have something to represent them, flying up into the top part of it. Some kind of, I don't know, defensive buff in a turn that they fly in a room, or some kind of counting as being on top of advantage, giving them accurate, something like that, a reroll. There's probably different ways to do it, but the main thing would probably be to give them a free hatchway open or mission action of some kind.
Yeah, if you tie a mission action or just a hatchway for free to one of the equipment,
Mm.
that would be a good change to see. Again, I don't think they should be able to do like any free APL action or get a third APL by any means. I think that's a bad choice for the team.
That's what's
And
keeping
like,
them in check, right?
yeah, like they do not need 3 APL by any capacity. Doing a free action here and there could be fine. But under no circumstances do they get 3.
Mm. All
I
right.
could see Hardened Exoskeleton. That's one more.
Oh, hardened
Yeah.
exoskeleton. Yeah, that would make sense. Make it apply to
Just
crits as well or something.
yeah, because I mean the team already struggles if it's getting charged by something
Mm.
like that. Like if they were ready, it was just any hit that comes through their way, or if
Yep.
they're activated, it's only normal.
All right. Well, definitely an interesting one. To go from one of the most seen teams, Hyrotech, in my last video, to go to one that's perhaps only recently flown into the meta, if you pardon the pun.
Just swinging the pendulum a little bit.
It's an interesting one. I think they're a cool team, and I think it's cool to see people playing them because they're so funky and they're really different from a lot of the other teams, and I think that's good for the state of the game.
Yeah, I'd agree. They're a very unique team, and the more unique teams we have that play well, is always something great for the game because it'll keep players interested and engaged.
For sure. All right. Thank you very much, Orion. Thank you very much, viewers, for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.